Go.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's start. Good evening, everyone. Good day, everyone. This week's Parsha of Chayesora deals with the final chapter in the life of Avraham Avinu. Now, there's a process here in Chumash Bereishis that we've all been witness to. Adam and Chava are created. He who saw Ein Kol Choy. She is the mother of all human beings. So there's a general classification called humanity. Kol Choy. It includes everyone. Then, as the Mishnah in Ovos points out, there are 10 generations from Adam till Noach. In those 10 generations, differences occur. In the natural progression of human society, there are different people, different societies, different kingdoms. Unfortunately, what united all of them was evil. Shoyakol adoros machisim uboyim. So the second progression is Noach. The Ein Kol Choy, the experiment, so to speak, with all of humanity didn't work. That all of humanity should be entrusted, so to speak, with the task of godliness in the world. So that's left for the Messianic era. That's left for Shem lemelech hakol haaretz bayom ha'u Shem echad u'shmo echad. That's left for a time that we have not witnessed yet. That all of humanity should be able to worship God and live a godly life. These are prayers that we say on Rosh Hashanah. V'yasoyu kol li'avdecha. Everybody should come to worship you. In the farthest islands in the world, the most primitive natives, the most sophisticated professors, everyone should come. But that's pretty much a messianic dream. Because in the pre-messianic world, in the world that we find ourselves in, cannot be that everyone. It's too diverse. It has too many problems, too many different backgrounds, too many different ideas and ideals. And therefore, what ends up is when you try to do all of humanity, you get evil. Because evil is the lowest common denominator of human behavior. The lowest rung of human behavior that everyone can identify with is greed, selfishness, violence, the inability to make room for others. That's common to all of humanity. And that's why the history of the world is what it is. Wars, revolutions, all sorts of things. Hatreds, always perpetuated. Because you're trying to deal with all of humanity, and that doesn't work. So then comes Noach. We're going to start. Noach is like the restart button on your computer. You put everything off, you turn everything off, can't get it to work right. We're going to start again. Now, Noach is not all of humanity. He has 3 sons, Shem, Chom, and Yafes. These are different, not only different races, but these are completely different societies, different goals, different views of the world. So it's refined down. We're not going to deal anymore with everybody. So Yefes, Yaft Elokim liyefes v'yishkon ba'alei Shem. Yefes has his place in the world. Chom has his place in the world, even though he committed terrible sin against his father. But one that we want to concentrate on is Shem. Shem becomes a Rosh Yeshiva, so to speak. The famous idea of the Yeshiva Shem v'Ever. So Shem undertakes to be the representative of godliness in the world. That's what he sees his task to be. He doesn't see his task to unify the whole world. It says, if he wants to come and live with Shem, good. But Shem is not going to be able to change Yefes unless he wants to be changed. The old bad joke is, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And they say 1, but the light bulb has to want to be changed. Doesn't say anything about Chom anymore. Chom, Canaan, the 7 nations that live in Eretz Yisrael, we're not dealing with them anymore. So it winnows down the progression. Noach to Shem. And again, the Mishnah says, Asora doas minoach var Avraham. And they also missed the boat. There were individuals like Shem, like Aver, like Melchizedek, who is Shem. There are individuals now. Just as Noach was an individual. But generally speaking, this doesn't work either. The division into the 3 categories of Shem, Chom, and Yafes. So Chom and Yafes, to a certain extent, also sink to the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator of humanity isn't being inhuman. And then it says, Ad shebo Avraham Avinu v'notal schar kulam. But now comes Avraham Avinu. And here the Torah emphasizes what is Avraham Avinu. Ki yadati v'asher yitzav ezbonov ezbeiso acharov. I know that he will be able to create a people. He will be able to see to it that his descendants will observe the Derech Hashem, will remain godly, will not succumb to all of the pressures that the world brings upon us. And therefore, it is the uniqueness of Avraham that he is able to establish something, excuse me, something permanent, eternal, Zbeso Acharov, forever, to serve the Ribono Shel Olam. Now, the Ribono Shel Olam changes the name of Avram to Avraham. Why? Av Hamon Goyim Nesaticha. I have made you the father of many nations. So the greatness of Avraham Avinu, and which is the charge of the Jewish people throughout our existence, is to be unique and alone and separate and different, and yet influence the whole world. Be the major driving force of civilization, of morality, of the better part of us, of what Abraham Lincoln called our better angels. So that's Av Hamon Goyim Nesaticha. I made you many nations. And you're going to be the father of many nations. And there are many nations in the world that claim Avraham as their father. Even though Kibi Yitzchok Yikori Lechozora. Only through Yitzchok will you survive. Will the winnowing process continue? So Avraham has two main sons, Yitzchok and Yishmael. Avraham again thinks that he can have both. But Sarah realizes that he cannot have both. That a choice has to be made. It's, so to speak, triage. And therefore she says, Goreishes Oma Sos Vespeno Kilo Yirashim B'niim Yitzchok. And it says, Vayera Avram Malodos B'no. Avram he's saddened. He's depressed because of this. Because he thought he could have Yishmael too. And the end is that he hears from heaven that Sarah is correct. Kol asher tomar elecha, Sarah shma b'kola. And therefore he has to abandon the idea that he can have Yishmael also. The Ribono Shel Olam says, "V'gam liYishmael shmaticha." I'll take care of Yishmael. He'll be a great and mighty nation. He will exist. But he is not the vehicle for holiness and piety and godliness in the world. That is not his task. That's not what he's here for. And that's why it says the Torah describes him, V'rovek Hashos. He's a great archer, he's a great athlete. He builds a physical world. He becomes numerous and conquers, and you see the whole Middle East. But he is not the ambassador, Kaviyachal, of the Ribono Shel Olam in the world. That remained with Yitzchak. Now we read at the end of today's Parsha, Avraham had numerous other children as well. The Bnei HaPilagshim. There were women, concubines, however we'll understand it, that Avraham fathered children from them. In his lifetime, there's a discussion in the Meforshim, when did he have these children? most of the Meforshim seem to think that he had them after Yitzchak was born, and really after the time that Sarah died, because he lived to 175, and when Sarah died, he was 137. So almost another 40 years. That's when the Bnei Apelagshim were born. There are others that ascribe it to earlier times, but in any event, there's a group of these people that are the children of Avraham. Just like Ishmael is the child of Avraham. We know nothing about them. The Torah gives us names, but to us, the names are almost meaningless because we don't know anything about them. And Avraham sends them away. And he gives them matanot, it says. He gives them gifts. He doesn't send them away empty-handed. He gives them gifts. So the simple explanation, if we look at the Pasuk, we would say he gave them money. He gave them goods. He gave them the ability to make it in life. He gave them an education. He gave them gifts. Vayishalche me'al Yitzchak beno, and he sent them away from Yitzchak. That there should be a clear delineation between them and between Yitzchak, who is his true heir. Now Rashi says here, a famous Rashi, what were the gifts that he gave? So Rashi says, Shem, Tuma, Mosar Lahem. He gave them an unclean name. What does that mean? What is Shem Tuma? And this, there's literally a literature written about it. What is the Torah trying to tell us here? What is Rashi rather trying to tell us here? And that's a medrash that Rashi is quoting. That he gave them Shem Tuma. So there are a few insights here that I want to share with you, because that, I think, helps explain in a minimal way certain of the events and ideas that exist in the world today, in our societies, and the struggles that we face. One interpretation of Shem Tuma is that he taught them monotheism. He taught them there's one God. He taught them the faith of one God. Tuma, but it became defiled by them. They couldn't grasp it in its entirety, in its uniqueness, in its simplicity. So one became three, etc., etc. But that's the idea of Shem Tuma, that he gave them the name of God, and they defiled it. It ended up being not what it was supposed to be. And that throughout history, we're witness to that over and over again. Christianity, in its essence, is basically Judaism defiled, made unclean, stripped of its uniqueness, overlaid with idolatrous customs and ideas. So he gave them a great gift and they squandered it. And because of that, we see that slowly but surely, the gift has little value anymore in the world. It's not appreciated. It's not followed. In Europe, it's said that 80% of the population, if we take out the Muslims, don't go to church, period. Europe, which is the heartland of Christianity. And the United States is getting there too. And it looks like an irreversible tide. So that's one idea of Shem Tuma. That originally it was a great gift that Avraham Avinu gave to the Bnei Apilakshim, to his offspring, but they corrupted it. So many times, we know that, you can give a great gift and it can be squandered, be ignored, can have no value. When I was a rabbi in Miami Beach, so people, I guess when they emptied their apartments, used to bring their Hebrew books and deposit them on the doorstep of the shul. And I was always interested in books. So most of the time it was Sidurim and Machzorim, Chumoshim, that people didn't even want that sentimental value of having their mother's or father's prayer book with them. They got rid of it. But once in a while, there was a treasure there. I found a first edition of the responsa of the Chacham Tzvi, of Tzvi Ashkenazi, published in 1712 in Amsterdam, the original mint copy. Somebody threw it out. He didn't know that he even had it. He didn't know what it was. Some book in Hebrew, so what does he care? That's squandering what you have, not appreciating what you have. And that is a terribly sad, occurrence. The second interpretation of Shem Tuma is that he gave them what we call superstitions, kishuf. Now, Maimonides is of the opinion that all of the kishuf and magic is phony, doesn't exist. He calls it achizas einayim. It's a type of magician's trick where he diverts your eyes, so you don't see what is really happening. You think he's sawing the lady in half. But the world believes in magic. The world believes in superstitions. In the 8th chapter of the Tosefta on Shabbos, there is listed all of the superstitions that existed 1,800 years ago. Every one of them is still here today. You want to know about black cats, about walking under a ladder, about magic numbers, all were there. There's a very interesting sidelight to that the Tosefta says that if a person erects a metal pole over his chicken coop, so it depends, if he does so for magical reasons, then that's an issur to do so. It's a prohibition to believe in such superstitions. Lo chei nosan l'cha Hashem Elokecha. The Lord our God did not give us these kind of superstitions. However, the Tosefta says, "Im mipnei haromim," if he does so because of thunder and lightning, if he uses it as a lightning rod, then it's permissible because that helps. That's natural. So you see that 1800 years ago, the Tosefta knew about the lightning rod before Benjamin Franklin. But Shem Tuma is magic, superstition, a world that's superstitious, that believes in all of this nonsense. And we have to admit that a lot of it has crept into us too. You don't live 1,000 years in Poland without becoming a little Polish. And you've got Polish superstitions. But that's not the worship of God. The worship of God is not based on superstitions. It's not based on magic. In fact, one can be bold enough in the Meforshim to say it, that it's not even based on miracles. Whatever happens, happens. Lo b'shamayim he. It's not, well, who cares? The Rabbi Eliezer said, let the water run backwards, the river, and it did. And Rabbi Yeshua said, so what? I don't care. You can perform all the miracles you want. It's not going to change what's true. So Shem Tuma refers to this idea of superstitions in the world. And that's a diversion from truth. Avraham meant to help them. So we'll see in next week's Parsha and Toldot Eliezer, whether Eliezer asked correctly that a miracle should happen and Rivka should come out and give drink to his camels, etc., etc. We're not supposed to be a people of superstitions. That's what's he sent them away from Yitzchak. Yitzchak is not superstitions. The third interpretation, which perhaps is the most optimistic of them, is Shem Tuma Mosar Lahem. He warned them about Tuma. He warned them what kind of a world this could be. And because he warned them, they had a chance to prevent it. But they didn't. And by not doing so, again, they squandered the opportunity that was given to them. And there is nothing as frustrating as squandering opportunities, not allowing them to come to fruition. A missed chance for greatness. So he gave them something and it ended up nothing. And he warned them against it. Shem Tuma Mosar Lahem. He warned them that there's a thing in the world called Shem Tuma. There are a lot of negative things in the world. Stay away from them. Be positive. Do good things. And they squandered it. And they became the Bnei Apilakshim. And Yitzchak, who had the one opportunity that he knew of, he followed through. And through him, the Jewish people were built. Ki bi Yitzchak yikor lechazora. So that's the progression from original man, from Adam and Chava, from Ein Kol Chai, to Noach, who's a tzaddik, but his three children, Shem, Ham, and Yafes, already are different. To Avraham Avinu, who has to somehow winnow his way through Yishmael and the Bnei Apelakshim until we get to Yitzchak. And in next week's Parsha, we'll see it has to go even further. That the vestige that is Esav also has to somehow be separated from us. And only through Yaakov do we become Yisrael, and do we become the eternal people, the Bnei Yisrael, that remains until this very day. So I want to thank you all for listening. Have a great Shabbat, stay well, and we'll hear good news from each other. Kol Tuv Selah.